Welcome to The Call, the podcast where we dive deep into the mysterious, often misunderstood experiences of being called by God. Whether you're wrestling with a sense of purpose, navigating a spiritual awakening, or questioning if what you're feeling is real, you're not alone. In this show, we explore the obscurities of the divine calling, the isolation, the doubt, the strange timing, and the often inconvenient demand of sacred purpose. We'll speak with thinkers, believers, skeptics, and storytellers who've wrestled with the weight of being chosen or feeling like they have. Because a calling isn't always clear, it's not always glorious, and it doesn't always come with instructions. So lean in. This is not just about faith, it's about the human experience of being summoned by something greater. When the world stays silent, but your soul is on fire. Let us begin. Welcome once again to The Called, a podcast about spiritual calling, the sacred discomfort, and the strange and beautiful tension of walking with God when the path is unclear. I'm your host, Prophet Kian, and today we will begin with a question that echoes in my heart, often in silence. And that is, what does it really mean to be called by God? We often hear this phrase tossed around in religious circles: called to preach, called to serve, called to go. But beneath the surface of this holy sounding language lies a maze of uncertainty, fear, and at times loneliness. Matthew chapter number 22, verse 14 says, "For many are called, but few are chosen." That verse has haunted and comforted people in equal measure. It raises the unsettling truth that not everyone who hears the call understands it, and not everyone who responds to it is ready for what follows. In segment number one, the nature of the call, we will delve deep into these obscurities. I have the privilege of inviting and introducing someone who is not a stranger by far, a formidable force, not only in this era, not in this, just in this generation, but for the generations to come. His voice resounds in my heart and in my mind as a pillar, not just of smoke, but of fire. And I believe that it is indicative and it is imperative that we start this podcast with none other than our very own Elijah Mitchell. So welcome him into the room, if you will. He does not know, well, he did not know what the topic was going to be on today. And so I am excited to get this fresh pressed oil from the man of God on this morning. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I got my brain rolling right now, I was listening to what you were speaking on. So my brain is now rolling, looking at some things. Oddly enough, um, funnily enough, you were speaking about call,
Hmm.
and I ain't gonna tell you what my book was already opened up to, what it's been opened up to for about an hour now.
Wow.
I'll give you the insight on that in a second. But man, it's good to be back. It's good to be here. Interestingly enough, um, I've been on my own journey, so to speak, just
Hmm.
getting myself um, back acclimated to the comfortability of what it is. You know, you get in life and you're walking in life. Life is life in, and you're trying to figure out what the next move is. But sometimes you you're living life and you think you're someplace, and when you
Hmm.
look up, you're so far away. So much proximity has gotten in between you and God, so to speak. Me,
Hmm.
I can speak personally. I've been in that place, and really just recently, I was blessed to just come under a covering that made me so aware of, not that I was actually out here in the streets tripping, wilding, but me living life just took me someplace else. And I
Hmm.
had put down what should have been going with me. So, um, in my own right, I understand actually the maze and the, not necessarily a burden, even though it is, but what it means to actually be under what it is to have a calling upon your life, and
Mhm.
then the how life sometimes seems like it gets in the way of it. And it's only through really maturity, growth, trial and error, you understand what that how to balance it all. Because it's so many different hats we wear as people. Um, Especially when you're trying to live the life that is pleasing to God. We make so many mistakes, we make so many errors, you know. We disappoint so many, we
Yeah.
ourselves become disappointed. We try not to be offended, but we find ourselves offended. Like it's a balancing act. Like we don't nobody kind of gets away unscathed to a degree.
Mm.
Um, but in the same token, um, when you understand we've been called to purpose, it's kind of hard to get away from. You don't really have a choice in the matter because all you know is that there's something you're on the precipice of something. There's something greater pulling for you to achieve more. You don't get it out the job. You don't necessarily get it out the career. You may not get it out your friends. You may not get it out the girlfriend or the wife or whatever. There's something just yearning and pulling for you to do more and lets you know you have more in you. And then
Mm.
that desire wakes up, and then there's just a desire just to do more. Um, so not to get so far ahead of the curve, but in the same token, man, it's good to be here, good to be back. The
Yeah.
platform has always been good to me. And as I'm on this journey, revival, so to speak, restoration, so to speak.
Mhm.
Um, I'm excited. The future is in front of me. I'm in a place I never thought I'd be in. Um, and my perspective is different. My things are different. So um, I'm excited and enthusiastic, man. Who knows? Only God does, but I'm excited to see where this ends.
Mhm. It's always exciting for me to have you on because people then get to see where the depths and the richness that I speak in um, derives from. And for those of you that are just meeting this force for the first time or hearing him speak for the first time, you will see a similar tone, if you will, that I've been able to glean over the years from the man of God um, in various seasons of my own life and his life, just watching him. And so for me, it is always an honor to share with the world the one that I pull on all the time, you know. So this is my, you know, y'all calling 911. This is who I'm calling. I'm calling Bishop, you know. So it is, this is, I don't say it like I say it all the time, but he just means that much to me. Um, and I'm just grateful that he's here. I'm grateful that we get to do this again and again and again and again and again. Um, and I'm looking forward to the future collaborations. I'm not going to spill the tea early, but just know that I'm looking forward to the future collaborations only. One of the things that you grazed upon that I think is pivotal for our understanding is that God's call rarely comes in a way that we expect. Um, and I think about my own calling when God called me, it was not loud, it wasn't glamorous. It actually came in the whisper of darkness while I laid awake in the wee hours of the night. As a child, 12 years old, I knew that God was calling me to what I did not know. Of course, the older I got, the more I began to understand this profound calling um, that I would also like to correlate to burden because it's a burden that you just can't shake. And so, even in my seasons of darkness, I could hear the Lord calling. I could hear Him um, pursuing me, His words pursuing me, and one day would overtake me as I obeyed. And I also just can always always envision it as a moment that I can never unsee. I can clearly see the times the Lord was calling me. I can clearly see his hand not being moved from me. And it always makes me think about Moses. Moses is my favorite character in the Bible as it relates to being called, him and Saul, him and Saul turned Paul, because Moses was a fugitive. I was a fugitive. From a young age, I knew that I was called, and I ran and I ran and I ran because I didn't know what it meant to be called. And quite frankly, I didn't want to have the burden of responsibility. I just didn't. I grew up and I said, I just want to get grown. I want to drive. I want to get married. I want to have some kids. I want to live. I want to travel. I never readily, in my mind, wanted to do this thing called ministry. But when I began to unearth the not only the prerequisite, but the command on the man as it relates to being saved, we're not just saved to just go to heaven, we're saved to serve. And so to usher in God's kingdom, to build his kingdom. And so that was pivotal for me in my adulthood. And so it just makes me think about the bush burning and God calling Moses out of the midst of the bush when Moses decided to turn aside. And one of the things that I want to really highlight is that God did not interrupt Moses' day-to-day schedule. You know, it wasn't until Moses decided to investigate this thing calling him out of the midst of the bush. Suppose Moses kept on walking. Would God have called him out of the midst of the bush? We see things all the time that are miraculous and supernatural and clearly can only be done by the hand of God.
Well,
But it's
let's
not
get
until
there.
we investigate these things. Go forth, man of God. I'm waiting for you.
Let's let's get there because you raised an interesting question. You said, well, God wasn't going to interrupt the schedule. I beg to differ. This is
Mm-hmm.
why. We're talking about the omniscient, the omnipotent, the genius
Mm-hmm.
that God possesses. And you got to take into account, okay, he might not even come in there and push Moses on the ground on a Monday and say, hey, come over here. But imagine that in small ways, he began to prick
Mm.
at the consciousness or the sensibilities of Moses to force Moses' hand to eventually turn aside. He knew what it
Mm.
would take to get him to turn his attention to. Same thing for us. God in his genius, all right, I know I can't necessarily overtly knock this bag of chips off the shelf to get him to turn around, but what I'll do is I'll prick the consciousness. I'll send this from over there. I'll send that from over there. I'll send her from over here. I'll send him from over here. I'll let this kind of get here. He'll prick the consciousness to get us to
Mm.
feel, okay, what's going on? Once you facilitate the awakening comes over, okay, what needs to happen or why is this coming the way it's coming? Now you're open
Mm.
when it comes to really primarily understanding calling. You were able to point to 12. I had been prophesied over since I was 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
All laid on me, hands of the ministry laid upon me, and the whole 9 yards. The interesting thing about it, and I'm gonna make a left to get to right. Um,
Okay.
the interesting thing about it, and this is why we have to be careful, first and foremost, because I don't believe this really gets talked about enough, even with people that just get saved, and then people that do have a calling upon their lives. Once an individual is made aware of either one of those things, I believe it's personally on whatever ministry that is to really help author and illustrate, well, not necessarily author, but illustrate the realities of the situation. Because whether anybody believes it or not, things have changed. You're no longer just functioning and you ain't picked up an enemy or op along the way, because that's not the truth. The reality is the moment you become aware that something's greater upon you or you're being ushered into a certain point, you immediately pick up an opponent. you pick up an adversary. And without you knowing that, you're walking around living life thinking everything good.
Mm.
And it's not. You have someone, a real thing. I got to throw him off the path because I don't think that gets discussed enough about the realities. People get successful and they're blessed and they're doing what they do. But sometimes I think people forget. And the only reason I think I'm probably in the forget in this particular portion of it is because I've been digging in Deuteronomy all day. And Deuteronomy really highlights when Moses was talking to the people. I told you I was going to let you know where I was at. When Moses was talking to the people, a big thing that stood out was, lest ye forget what God has done. He brought you out of Egypt. He brought you out of the furnace. He brought you with a mighty hand. I think sometimes we forget to inform and let other people know, listen, this is cool that you're doing this, but understand you need to be here with it because it's serious. You, regardless of what their age is, that's why it's important. All right, yeah, you called. Covering is important because you can have the call, but you need to be covered as well. You just can't be out here just chilling
Yeah.
because you're so much more open. You know, when you're young like that, even when you're an adult, if you're not necessarily familiar, even though a call may exist, if you're not necessarily familiar with the ways of how the process is, the studying that you need to do, the praying that needs to happen, the fasting that needs to occur, the people that you need to be around, you haven't. There's certain things you learn trial and error. But if
Mhm.
nobody's there to really help cover you and help, hey, bro, listen, it's like this, it's like that. You need to understand this is going to occur. You're going to experience these feelings. You're going to experience isolation. You're going to experience what that loneliness feels like. You're going to have such a great desire to want to do what everybody else is doing. And even though, yeah, you might be out there doing it, and I'm speaking from personal experience, it just don't never feel right. Yeah, you could be out there
Yeah.
saying whatever, get
Yeah.
to whatever. It just because you're not supposed to be there.
Mm.
And a proper covering, yeah, judgment may not exist per se, but in the same token, there's something there, A, covering you, and then in the same token, ushering you, thereby through an example, through encouragement, through chastisement, through um, information. See, in an age where so much information is readily available, context then becomes the issue because I'm giving you information, but a lot of us sometimes we haven't been through that stage in life to be able to properly put it in focus so we can
Mhm.
apply it properly and make it wisdom. When you're
Mhm.
just coming into your call, you're just coming into what rubbing shoulders up against purpose. You gotta have somebody that is there with the wisdom, with the knowledge, with the understanding to help it be wisdom for you. A lot of times we might get the call and we still in the middle of life. Purpose might get revealed. We still in the middle of life.
Yeah.
I mean, I got the call on me, 8 years old, me not understanding what it is, and I had a heck of a journey. It has been a grind to get to 41 years old. I thank God because I'm here, but the walk that it took, the
Yeah.
things that I went through now, I was blessed.
Mhm.
I'm a PK, I'm a bishop's kid. You know, my mama knew God, my father knows God. I was blessed to have him put the book in my hand. Um, and help bring me along to a degree. But even that, you still have to take a walk on your own. And a lot of times, what doesn't happen, you're not really having those conversations
Mm.
because there's a real psychological aspect to it. There's a real psycho emotional aspect to it that doesn't readily get conversated enough about because the loneliness by itself will drive you down a path that you never
Yeah.
thought you would. And what I'm saying is not to
Yeah.
discourage, but to help you understand. Listen, this is not for the weak. That's why it says what? You read what? Many called, few chosen. Because you got to have that thing in you, that dog in you,
Yeah.
because you got to persevere that. You got to take your licks. You got to take your kickings. You got to take your mistakes. You got to take your bad choices. You got to take all that stuff. You got to take the pain when you hurt yourself. You got to take the frustration that comes with maybe being poor, not coming from anything, not understanding how things supposed to come about, being frustrated with God, being frustrated with your family, being frustrated with yourself, being
Hmm.
frustrated with the circumstances around you, with the neighborhood you grew up in, with all these things, ancillary things. And still, at some point in time, you're going to have to proclaim the goodness of God. You
Mm.
got to go through all of that and figure out how to get there to still do that, regardless of the age. And that's the thing with when 'cause most people call it calling. I'll probably more comfortably use the term purpose
Okay.
because I'm into umbrellas. I like offshoots. Um, I always like brainstorming because you get to write the one thing in the middle and then just have varying different offshoots from it, or umbrellas that can have the one principal thing and then you can offshoot from it. Purpose, when you align yourself with purpose, or when you're finally coming to purpose, so much comes from that. But you are still in need of a covering. You're in need of being under Allah ministry or someone that is wisdom to help guide, usher you to a place of where you need to be. Um, like I said, I was called prophesied over at the age of 8.
Hmm.
Never knew in a million years that okay, the enemy the whole time was like, all right, bro, I don't care that you 8.
Yeah.
I don't care nothing about that because I can't afford for you to get to 21.
Mm.
So let me up the ante. I got to turn the volume up. So what happens? I get into situations and things that increase the carnal aspect of me.
Hmm.
Carnal man is enmity against who?
Against God.
God.
Hmm.
I'm unaware of this, even though my pop may be shooting it to me. I really don't understand it. Why? Because I ain't been in the book of Romans for myself. I don't know.
Hmm.
I'm just thinking I'm out here, New Jersey, you know what I'm saying? We out here doing what we do. This how a kid come along. So what happens? I'm a sex addict. 10, 12, 13, 14, 15. I'm locked in. Tricked all type of stuff up behind some hand pies.
Hmm.
But these are the things that happens. It's not by accident some of these things enter into our lives at the times that they do. It's not by accident. It's more or less by design. And because when you're young, that's why so much happens sometimes when you're young and calling or purpose is assigned to your life. So much comes. It's
Hmm.
because to keep you distracted from what purpose actually is. And by the time, and this is how the enemy gets it done. And by the time you come to grips with, okay, I'm supposed to be doing this. Now you got the battle with all the poor decisions that came before you understanding what you need to be or what you should be doing.
That's good.
And it's not that you're wrestling with those decisions per se in the physical, it's in the
Hmm.
psychological, it's in the emotional. Because what's the hardest thing to do? Trust yourself when you know you haven't been making the best decisions.
Hmm.
Can I trust my decision making here? Can I do? That's why it's important to have the covering. You got to have somebody that's there watching over you. But it's more important that you listen. When somebody say, "Hey, bro, you don't need that." When somebody say, "Hey, fam, you don't need that. Come on over here, bro. Let's talk about this."
Hmm.
Because in the same way, and I bring it forward, because I want this to be wisdom. I want this to be somebody might catch this, and it's not so much of what you may or may not do. I want people to be like, well, listen, that makes sense. Let me try to get up under somebody or get up under someone that is trusted and understands. Because most of the time when God calls, he sends. He doesn't
Yeah.
halfway do it. The problem is, where are we in ourselves? And a lot of times, not by accident, is the things we go through, we're already at a place where we can't listen.
Mm.
because we're either too hurt, we're either too let down, we're either too full of ourselves, or we're just at a place where no nothing makes sense. So I just ain't listening to nobody. I'm gonna just get to it on my own.
Mm.
And all that's going on while there's still very much a calling and a purpose over your life. You ain't even got started yet, which is why I brought it the way I brought it, because that's how much comes, and you ain't never got started yet.
Mm.
You ain't even got going. And that's how it happens. Very rare is the case where you're able to get called and you take off.
Yeah.
You kind of gotta wrestle with it. You kind of
Mhm.
gotta sort it out. You know and know. Am I the aficionado upon what this particular topic is? No, I got surprised like everybody else. I'm just giving a different perspective as upon
Mhm.
how my personal experience went. And I know other men that has the same testimony, so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, Having a calling is an interesting challenge because you're talking about something that for a lot of us is such an a ways from what and who we believe that we are as a person. It's such a, for a sense of better term, a contradiction of
Mhm.
who, what, when, where, how I am as an
Yeah.
individual. Like I ain't got time for all that. I want to go out here, shoot
Mhm.
some ball, holler at some women, eat a piece of chicken. I'm chilling. I ain't trying to go through a whole lot. I ain't looking for no excess pressure. Listen, I'm glad to be here, but I'm good.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. And purpose, calling,
Mhm.
demands more,
Yeah.
regardless of how much chilling you're trying to do. Because I'm in a scenario right now where I just want to be chilling. Let me be clear. I want to chill. But like I've spoken to you, it's just funny how God uses people, places, and things to make you so oddly aware that there is greater demanded of you.
Mhm.
And I said I was going to make a left to get it right. That's how God was able to get Moses to finally say, let me turn aside. Moses knew he had more to do than be out here playing with the sheep.
Yeah.
Somewhere in his consciousness, he understood there was something pulling at him.
Mm.
He's had enough experiences to know it, because if we look at Moses and we listen to the story of Moses, it ain't Moses' first time running up against about Jehovah. That ain't his first time. So to understand and hear something, there's a bush that has not been burnt.
Mm.
His mentality at some point in time, all right, let me go see what people talking about. People up here tripping, man. And to go and to have the encounter that he has. And then his life has changed, because the calling can be one thing, but until you have that encounter,
Mm.
because that's what it's leading up to. The call is one
Yeah.
thing, but to get started, you got to have that encounter. See, you don't get to have the call and don't ever think you're not going to have the encounter.
Mhm.
You got to encounter God. It's impossible. Nobody gets away from that.
Mm.
You have to have the encounter, because it's only by one way that you're going to ever come to understand what you should be doing or where you should be, or at least what you should be aimed at.
Mhm.
And for Moses, let me turn aside and see
Yeah.
this great sight. His words, not mine. So what does he do? It ain't like he went up the street. See, we got to think about how God does a thing, man. It's not like Moses walked up the street, bust a left, boom, bush burning. The man had to
Mhm.
climb a mountain, bro. Think about that.
Yeah.
With none of the technology, with none of the things that existed, the man climbed a mountain, bro. And for us, it's the same thing. We have to climb the mountain of our own foolishness and some stuff injected upon us
Mm-hmm.
because not everybody's fighting the same fight. You got to think about people are, my case, things happen in life, and then you got to wrestle with self worth. Am I even
Mm-hmm.
worthy of? I understand what was said. I understand what the prayers were. I understand what people say when I brush up against, but my life has been X, Y, and Z. God, how you
Mm-hmm.
still find good in this?
Yeah.
God, I had to
That's
deal
good.
with this, and I done this, and I done did that. I understand what you want me to do, but how?
Mm-hmm. Mm.
How does this get started? You know how people are. How? How am I supposed to safely do this? Because all I really want to do is put my head in the sand and make my little bit of days, try to be happy out here, and thank God for what He's allowed me to lay hold to. And I just want to lay back, God, how do I do this and not risk this?
Yeah. Mm. That's
See,
good.
the mountain is different for everybody. It just happened story wise. Moses had to go up there. He had to get there. You have to meet God.
Mm.
Sometimes just to have the encounter, you have to push past all of the concerns.
Yeah.
And it's not that, oh, they made up in your mind. No, my debt is a real issue. My broken heart is a real issue. My scarred emotions is a real issue. My loneliness is a real issue. My anxiety, my depression, those are real issues. But guess what I got to do? Especially when the demand is placed upon me in such a way, my job is to figure out how to push through it. Because yes, is there an empowering? Is all that stuff there? Sure. God right there with you.
That's right.
But, and I tell everybody all the time, there's always something you got to do.
Mm-hmm. I think that is important to bring to the forefront because we see the call in this day and age. It's been glamorized uh, because we see more of the beginning or the ending or whatever stage, but we do not investigate or seek to learn or aspire to learn, as you so eloquently articulated, that there indeed is a mountain to climb. And if we don't glean anything else from the call, one, we must be able to recognize the voice of God. We must stop denying the things that transpire in our life or have transpired in our life or the things that we witness as supernatural and then slap God in the face and ascribe some other God or deity or force to it, technology, spirit, whatever host, whatever being you
Mm,
want to ascribe to it. And so Moses climbing this mountain, I believe, like as you said, the Lord engaged him in a way. He knew what it would take to intrigue Moses. He knew what it would take for him to want to investigate it. He knew how to engage his curiosity, to lead him off that beaten path, the path that he chose for himself, the path that we've chosen for ourselves, the things that we want to do because it's what we want to do. Because I tell people all the time, when I was in the world, I did exactly what I wanted to do, how I
mm,
wanted to do it, with no regret and no remorse. And I loved it because there is a part of paving your own life that, quite frankly, is enjoyable. There's pleasure, there's a fulfillment, a sort of fulfillment in it. And for me, there was something about being able to do what I do. And really, what I was doing, I was taking the gifts and the talents that the Lord had given me to build his kingdom, to build my own kingdom. I was in the book of Matthew, um, chapter 24 last night, and Jesus had climbed the Mount of Olives. Talking about a mountain again. Man, you talking about a mountain. The Lord was talking to me about a mountain last night. And he had just left the synagogue. Had been teaching in the synagogue. But what was perplexing to me is that the disciples were not in the synagogue with him. And so it let me know that there was not a need for them to, one, be taught as whatever that audience was. And so they were on the outside of the temple. And when Jesus came out of the temple, they were looking at the building. And Jesus said to them in so many words, "Why are you marveling at this building? Why are you engulfed in this man made structure?" And he began to reveal and unveil to them that the building that they were so amazed and astonished by was going to be torn down, that no, not one brick would be left standing. And so it reminded me of our human efforts and how they're futile. And then it reminded me that except the Lord builds this house, we labor in vain. If we're not building God's kingdom, if we're not doing the things of God, they're futile. They're all the things that Moses did. We have Moses, we are introduced to Moses going down the Nile. Nothing about the house of Pharaoh, what he did in Pharaoh's house, is recorded. 40 years of his life, of him building things for man, of him learning, gleaning in the temple, receiving the best education, nothing is recorded. Yet his latter works, not even when he was in the wilderness at Jethro's house. So what's that? Almost 80 years now of his
Yeah.
life. And so I believe that God is earnestly saying, even in the call, because there are different types of call. You know, you were able to directly connect the first calling at 8, mine at 12, but God is calling even now. And so it made me think about what is burning quietly even within ourselves, waiting for our attention. There are things waiting, and it goes back to one of my favorite verses, one of my favorite scriptures, that there's an earnest expectation. It says the earth is groaning in labor pains and with pains for the sons of God, not the sons of the world, the sons of God to be revealed. And that hence um, are the called, but the chosen. Um, or as others would say, the elect. Um, and so I'm encouraged to be able to continue this conversation in a different light, and in a different sphere, because it requires attention. I believe it requires another level of depth and stretching, um, because you highlighted an excellent point, and it's something that I often allude to, that we cannot walk this walk alone. Samuel had Eli, and I believe that this is also a season where the Lord is calling us back to education in the form of apprenticeship, in the spiritual and the religious realm. We call it covering, as you articulated. You need a covering. You need someone that's going to teach you. You need someone that's going to hold you accountable. You need someone that's going to be able to explain the deep things of God, the mysterious nature of God, so that you're not, so that your carnality is not getting the best of you, so that
I'm
we're
gonna say
not
something
pursuing
though.
these other things, and show us how to pursue the call, and so that the call can overtake us, so that we can um, thrive in purpose, and so that time and destiny can collide, so that the kingdom of God can be established, so that the will of God, so that the purpose of God, so that the mandate, so that the command can go forth. It's going to go forth anyway. Um, the Lord is just desiring to use you. He's desiring to use me. And so I'm remiss to I'm sad that we have to end this segment this way. It's kind of like we're on a hanger. But I do want to leave our viewers with this one question to reflect on. And it's very simple. What in your life is burning quietly, waiting for your attention? And as we begin to, as you take the time and create the space to listen to the voice of God, to recognize the voice of God, because there's a lot of things vying for our attention. I pray that you not only connect with it, but that the Lord connects you with a person that is able to help you walk um, and understand what this thing is. No one's call is the same. No one's called in the same manner. And as Elijah said, we all have a mountain to climb. We all have something that we must do so that we can take hold of it. And that's even before we accept the call. And so, as we end on this note, I would just want you to know that we will be back every week, every Saturday at noon. So, um, at Kavad 365 Ministries. You can go on the YouTube, you can go on the website, www.kavad365.com, to watch this, to get it down in your spirit. We're going to continue on the subject title, The Call, and the various components and the various mechanisms and the inner workings of what it is to be called. Um, and we are going to the best of our ability, with the guidance of the Holy Spirit, help bring about understanding to this subject matter that seems to ever be relevant in our day, in our age. And so I pray that not only that you are blessed, but that you are edified, that you have been enlightened, that you have been empowered, more importantly, that you have been encouraged by this podcast segment on today. Until next time, Godspeed and shalom.
Sure.